So Cadia is standing firm with the new Astra Militarum box set. Let's take a look at the contents and talk about how much it might be worth. Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where today we're talking Imperial Guard once more, and this time we're going to be taking a focused look at the Imperial Guard Cadia Stands box set, the new Astra Militarum launch box that Games Workshop previewed on Warhammer Day and showed us most but not all of the contents. Here's just a very rough picture of what we'll be getting in the box. They haven't shown us the actual Codex cover yet, though this is the picture that was on the back of the box that denoted it. But in general you get a fairly decent amount of miniatures, a whole bunch of shock troops, a command squad, a sentinel and some ordnance batteries. As always with Games Workshop's big discount box sets though, a potentially interesting deal can look a lot less good if they're charging a very high amount for it, and I thought it would be interesting to go through the box bit by bit, talk about how much Games Workshop might sell it for separately, and talk about how much value might be in the box overall. So first up, the box was announced last weekend. Currently the release date for it isn't known yet, but if I had to guess it'd be around mid to late November, just based on the rough lag time between when they usually announce box sets and when they actually launch them. If that holds true, then it would mean Astra Militarum this side of Christmas, though it remains to be seen whether or not the Codex and the rest of the range would actually arrive then, or whether or not that might be January. Often these launch box sets tend to precede the Codex and the individual model releases by somewhere around 4 to 6 weeks, though Games Workshop often does seem to like keeping things flexible, and it totally wouldn't be out of the question for them to release things faster or slower than that. Over 9th edition we've had a fair few of these launch boxes, the Black Templars, Orcs, Leagues of Votan and Chaos Knights, and judging by those box sets we'd expect the price to be around about £120 to £160 or $200 to $265. Often with Games Workshop, prices tend to trend up a bit, but interestingly that Leagues of Votan launch box was one of the cheaper among these, only being £120 or $200, relatively slightly less than it could have been from Games Workshop. I think if I had to guess for this one, I would suspect it might be a little bit more than the Leagues of Votan, just because instead of bikes you get 2 big heavy weapons and a vehicle, which just feels like it has a little bit more weight and value to it compared with the character and the bikes. Could just be the same though, what Games Workshop does tend to charge for things can be a bit arbitrary. If we go through the Codex bit by bit and then put all the numbers together, first up the Guard Codex would likely be £32.50 or $55 in line with the rest. The one that comes in this box set will probably be a special edition version of that. Usually that just equates to removing the 40k logo from the front of the book and occasionally having some slightly different cover art. I think people are generally believing that they didn't show off the Codex cover when they showed off the launch box because it basically spoils an unreleased character. A few people have been speculating that this might be a new Lord Solar Macarius. I guess it could also be a Rough Rider, which are also rumoured to be coming alongside the Codex releases. In the short term, the Codex might be particularly sought after, as it'll be the first place to get the Guard rules. It's certainly going to be fun to finally have a whole new Codex to dig through, and have Guard actually caught up with 9th edition. It does sound like from the rumours that we don't actually have a whole load of 9th edition left. Supposedly with 10th edition dropping in mid to late 2023, there's every chance that things could be changing again at that point, but unless they pull a full hard reset and rescind all the codexes for indexes, hopefully this book should continue to have good use in 10th. Next up we've got the Astra Militarum data cards. Again, their price should be well known at £17 or $29. They'll be updated for the new codex with new psychic powers and stratagems and things. Hopefully they'll have the various orders listed out as well, that could be pretty handy. Useful enough to have when gaming I guess, maybe not 100% essential if you wanted to get an Astra Militarum army together on a budget, still though handy enough to have in the box. Next up we've got the new Cadian shock troopers, 20 models of them, and I feel in general that's going to be pretty handy for anyone getting a guard army together. A few more lasguns never really hurts too much to bulk out existing collections either. It looks like a pretty solid and flexible kit to be honest, one of each of the special weapons and different options for the sergeant including bolters. Kind of interesting that there'll be 2 different ways to field them, either as infantry squads or Cadian shock troops, the latter apparently leaning heavier towards special weapons and aggressive tactics. Pricing from Games Workshop wise, I'm a little bit unsure on these guys. More hardy Games Workshop troops tend to go around the £30 mark, but quite a lot of the ones that actually have decent options within the kit tend to go more around the 35. That was what the Kill Team Guard box sets, the Traitor Guard and the Death Corps box were priced at, and it seems at least plausible that the Cadians could be the same cost as essentially those other Guard regiments. Some of their more hardy type troopers can be a little bit cheaper though, say for example around the £30 mark for the Admix Skitarii, or the Orc Boys. They've also been a recent release that was a little bit cheaper than the normal trend. For these guys I put a bit of a midpoint, £32.50 or $60. Hopefully Games Workshop shows a little bit of mercy to Horde Guard players, but to be honest, even on the lowest amount that I'd be expecting for them, they're still going to be fairly expensive for basically battle line cannon fodder and infantry. Next up, we've got the new version of the Cadian Command Squad, which I think we already have quite a close analogue to in the Cultist Dark Commune from Chaos. I'd guess that they probably cost the same as that at £30 or $50. The models themselves perhaps do feel pretty similar in nature to the previous Command Squad box, but it's quite nice to get some new sculpts with some fancier details on. According to their previews, it sounds like they're just going to function as the one unit that are character protected now, and apparently are able to issue one order per turn, while that new Castellan issues 2. Again, kind of hard to imagine a central HQ choice like this won't be useful to Cadian forces, though depending on what the other support characters do, there might be a chance they could be a little bit redundant if the Castellan is super point sufficient. Next up, and perhaps the most interesting bit in the box for me, are these field ordnance batteries, essentially very big heavy weapon teams, large sturdy guns with 3 crewmen, a gunner, spotter and loader. These guys mount either a heavy las cannon, an anti-infantry missile launcher, or essentially a mini earthshaker called a bombast gun. For me, these are perhaps the biggest question mark as to how they'll be priced or sold. Several of their teaser shots have 3 of them in the same image, but then they're only selling 2 of them here, which makes me wonder whether they'd be sold in 2s individually. And there perhaps aren't a whole load of direct analogues for similar size models that Games Workshop have released in recent years. I guess maybe one of the equivalents could be the Orc mech guns, but hopefully they wouldn't be pricing them quite that high, as that's just one of the examples that is one of the most ridiculous points to value ratios in 40k in general. I'd hope that they'd package at least 2 of them per set, though I guess we'll wait and see. Just for a rough estimate at the moment, I've put these at £35 or $60 for the pair of them, though admittedly depending on how they package them, I think it could be drastically higher or lower than that. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments if you've got any other insights. Finally, we've got the newer, bigger and techier looking Sentinel. The kit builds both sets, still has the options for the different guns and the various upgrades such as missile launchers or chainsaws. He also looks a bit bigger and meatier than the last one, so might be a little bit tougher to kill in game. For a price estimate for this one, I've based it on the Genestealer Cult Achilles Ridge Runner, which feels like a vehicle of a similar sort of class and weight, so perhaps around about the £32.50 or $55 mark for the Sentinel. Overall, putting it all together, just very roughly, that would equate to £212, $369, roughly around €280. If Games Workshop did choose to release this with a kind of middling price tag for their value box sets, that would be £130 or $210, so theoretically somewhere around a 40% discount, which really isn't too bad for them. Obviously discounts are always a little bit theoretical when comparing against their own prices that they set, but I think it's still worth bearing in mind, given whether or not you'd want to buy these models separately or together. If it is around about that mark though, I'd say it looks like a broadly decent enough deal for guard collectors, and it would be quite a popular set. Hopefully they go for a more Leagues of Votann type price rather than a higher Chaos Knight type one. That would diminish the value by quite a bit, I think. In any case, let me know what you're making of the box so far, and would you be tempted to pick it up if it did come out at that sort of price? If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k stuff coming. I'll certainly be covering all the guard news and previews as they come out. Finally, if you've been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that one linked down in the video description if you're interested. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, then the link is down in the video description. In any case, an enormous thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.